everyone, and welcome to this week's Old School live stream. This week, we are going to be talking about the Activity Advisor with mods Kieren.
Hello.
Diazong.
Hello, hi.
Squid.
Hello.
And Sova.
Hello.
How are you all doing? Let's start with you, Kieren. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a fun week in the heat, let me tell you. I say fun in complete sarcasm. It's been brutally hot in the UK, but we're through it now, so it's wonderfully cool today.
Absolutely, yeah. I appreciate the British weather now, finally. Squid, how are you doing?
Good, yeah. Excited for the Activity Advisor to get into players' hands now. That's really cool. And yeah, managed to survive the heat, which is always a challenge for me. But here we are. So, yeah.
Nice.
Good.
Awesome. Daizong, welcome. How are you doing?
Hello, yes, very good, thank you. So we got Activity Advisor released yesterday, and very exciting to see the players' feedback on that.
Awesome. And Sova, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. This is my first live stream, but I'm going to be coming on next week again to talk about clue scrolls.
Hell yeah, already giving them a sneak peek. That's awesome. Right, so as Mod Sova mentioned, we want to do a quick sneak peek of next week's update, which includes clue scrolls. More on that in a bit, but first of all, let's go through some announcements. So, exclamation mark game update. This is the Activity Advisor that has created a lot of hype on socials lately. We've made a new feature available for a select number of accounts this week, which basically advises on suggestions for activities. We'll be rolling out to everyone once it fully launches. You can find all the information with exclamation mark game update. Just to note as well, this week's news post included some information about our IP policy. So that's relevant to any of our creators out there. Go check it out with exclamation mark game update. Okay, on with the show. Mod Sova, take it away.
Oh, hello. We've been working recently on the clue scroll helper, which if you've used RuneScape at all, you might be a bit familiar with. It's a feature for the enhanced client, so on mobile and their own in-house client. And you can see there on the video a few things going on. One of them is information on the clues that you're going to be doing on screen. And a few other things on there are map highlights, in-world highlights, and general direction on what to do without having to go and go to a third-party website to go and say, oh, how do I solve this anagram clue that I've done 500 times and I can't remember. So yeah, in that video you can see the different steps where it will highlight the people you need to talk to, places where you need to dig, all kinds of stuff. The live stream next week, I'll come back on and go into more detail on that, go into more detail on the features and answer any questions on it. That's me.
First experience experimenting with like transitions and things like that. But Mod Sova will be on next week to talk a bit more about the clue scroll helper. So hopefully we can answer all of your questions, send them in to us, and we'll make sure that he is grilled next week. And thank you so much, Sova, again for that. All right, we also need to ask him some new mod questions because obviously it's first time on the Old School stream. Speaking of new mod questions, we have Mod Daizong with us. Thank you so much for joining us. We would love to welcome you onto the stream by asking you a few questions. So Daizong, what do you currently work on at Jagged?
Yeah, I'm currently working actually with Mod Squid on the Activity Advisor. So I want to use this chance to thanks for all the great feedback we've got so far. And we are working hard to go through them in order to improve the Activity Advisor.
Awesome. It has been received so positively. I'm sure the players are going to be wondering, what have you worked on before, and what has your favorite piece of content been that you've currently worked on at Oldschool?
Yeah, I think it would be this activity advisor. So this is an idea we've had in mind for a long time actually. So sometimes when myself was playing the game, I was wondering that what I should do next, and it would be great if there's a tool to help me to decide what to do next. So really exciting to see we have finally released the phase 1 of it now.
Nice, awesome, and it's great to have you here. Pleasure having you on the channel, and thank you for everything that you've been involved with so far.
Yes.
Okay, so as we are in the build-up to mid-August, we thought we would share an update on the highly anticipated Masori Armour, so a sneak peek for you. Masori Armour is the best-in-slot range gear that can be earned from taking part in Tombs of the Mascot. And for those of you wondering about the release date, it won't be too long now. We have finalized a date. We'll be sharing that with you on our official channels in not too long. But I can't tell you when, sorry. Here you can see a concept. The concept is by the lovely Mod Daizong. I've got some text as well, so forgive me if I can't read this out properly, but I will do my best. So during the Caridian-Zerosian War, a group of rangers known as the Masori were established. While they did their fair share of fighting in the war, their primary role was to defend people from the thieves and murderers who would look to take advantage of the war's chaos. You can see here Mod Daizong utilized Egyptian shapes and materials and bird motifs for that ranged feel to tie it into the best-in-slot range feel for this raid. I think it looks absolutely amazing. What do you guys think? Do you have any thoughts?
Love it.
Yes, looks amazing. See.
It is super cool. The art team just keep raising the bar on what's possible in old school art. It continues to amaze me.
Absolutely. We also have the in-game renders as well. Credit to Mod Soften if we can go to those. Awesome. I think we either have a turning model potentially, or yeah, that's it. That's the one. You can see their backs at the moment, but they're turning around. I just think it looks epic.
Awesome.
Nice.
Just amazing. I've seen a bunch of people wanting to see this on social, so I'm really glad we can finally preview it to you. Make sure you send the feedback to us. But I just personally love it, and I hope you guys love it as much as we all do. All right.
Yeah, I'd just say, I think everything Tombs of a Mascot, like the art team, has absolutely blown out the water, and can't wait for you all to see all the other bits and pieces that we've got going on. It's been a thrill to be playtesting it the last few weeks.
Definitely leveling things up for sure. Awesome. Right, on with the show. Let's talk about the activity advisor. I would love to just give the floor to Squid and Diazong just to talk you guys through it if you hadn't heard about it. Basically, take it away, guys.
Cool. Yeah. So Activity Advisor is a system that will raise players' skill level, quest status, and recent activities and other essential stats, and then use them to pick up the suitable game content from the content list and display them in the Activity Advisor. So we'd like it to be used as a supporting tool that is similar with the wiki, but can give more custom suggestions based on each player's profile, and to help players, especially the new player and the returning players, when they are not sure what to do next.
Yeah, there's a lot of content in RuneScape, and it can be overwhelming and difficult to find stuff that's relevant to you. And sometimes it's not even a case of finding what you should do, but even what you can do. There's just so much. And we know that exploration and goal setting is a core part of the game, so we don't want to undermine that. We don't want to make linear guides or task lists. There's no rewards on this. We're trying to avoid undermining that. So instead, we're focusing more on surfacing content, making it easier to be aware of things that you can do and that will be useful to you. So for example, travel is a good one because that's a pain point that becomes difficult to find how you can move around the world easier. Think like fairy rings. How do you find out about fairy rings unless you stumble across that quest or read through the wiki? So hopefully the advisor will help surface those things and just be a tool to aid your own goal setting.
Cool, yeah. And currently we have done the system for all the quests in the game as the phase 1 of it. And as we all know, that quest is a very important part of the game. And also there are two types of quests you can find in the activity advisor. So available quest and the target quest. So available quests, as you can see in the screen, are the quests that player can take right now. And for the target quest, they are the quests that will give important reward to the player. But the player's character has not met this quest requirement yet, but only close to this requirement. So we will also display the missing requirement that player needs to reach for this quest.
It's been a fun one to work on, although it has been challenging. I mean, design-wise, just creating the quest rating system has been tricky. Finding out categories that represents each quest relative to each other, and making that scale with your character's level and experience has been an interesting challenge, especially dialing in those numbers. That's been a team effort. A big shout out to Husky and Kieren for helping finalize those numbers. On the tech side of things, another interesting challenge there. Dynamic systems like this in RuneScript are difficult to say the least, and this is doing some funky stuff with arrays that I feel like we're pushing RuneScript to the limits there, but it works, and that's the main thing, so that's awesome. It's been fun though.
Yeah, so we're currently releasing it during an initial test period, the A/B test there. So the main reason we want to make sure is the current activity advisor can give enough help to the players, especially for the new players and the returning players. So I've seen some concern from community about if these tools will ruin the sense of exploration for the players. And that's also something we like to find out from this A/B test period. So we already have a few plans in mind about the direction of activity advisor in the future. And I think players and especially community feedback are very important for us. And we'd like to hear what players think for the current phase 1 and use the feedback we got to improve it and to think about how we can carry on work for the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Daizong, I know that you also worked on leagues, and I noticed that a player mentioned this kind of looks similar to the league's task system. Did you find inspiration from the league's task system when you worked on the activity advisor?
Well, that's actually an interesting question. So to be honestly, the time when we had the idea for making the activity advisor is actually before I was working on the league. But when we are designing the UI of activity advisor and think about how we can make sure the information is clear and easy for player to pick up. So I think league task UI is definitely one of the systems we look at as a reference, as it is a system that works well and the player are very familiar with the format of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great. Well, if there's anything else you guys want to add, feel free, but I would love to jump into some player questions. So speak now or forever hold your peace.
Just quickly say, like on the A/B testing stuff, like players have a really good read on like why we're doing this, right? This is really helpful for introducing those new people into the game. The depth of the game is so vast, you want to get to grips with it, and that is one of the key reasons why we really need to run an A/B test, because we could see your feedback through social channels and such, but we also want to get actual data on how this performs, right? Does this actually help people? Where do these people quit? Where do these people drop out? And also get a load of insight into how do they use it? What elements do they use of this system? Do they use it at all when it's presented to them? So we need to get it right to make sure that we actually are helping new people and not making it worse for them, basically.
Thank you. So is there any way for people who haven't gotten into the A/B test, can they get in? Or if not, when do you expect them to be able to get their hands on it if they were not successful to get into this testing period?
Cool. I'll take this one. Actually, the current A/B test is open to the returning player who has not played the game for 30 days or more, and we're expecting to run the test for around 3-4 weeks, depending on the feedback we got. So for players who have not been picked up, so they just need to wait a few more weeks for this to be released to everyone. But like always, we are listening to players' feedback, and if the A/B test goes very well and more players would like to join it, then we could stop it early and release it to everyone earlier.
That's great news. Thank you. I saw a few people being concerned that for those of them who are experienced, they wanted a toggle for the activity advisor because it might be close to the special action key, or they may not want to use it. So can it be toggled off?
Yes, we have added a setting to allow the player to hide activity advisor if they want to. And also one more thing is, if the store button is hidden, then the activity advisor button will be placed in the position of the store button, so we have more space for the gameplay area.
Awesome, thank you. I think that will put many highly experienced players' minds at rest, because I'm sure that they don't want to be recommended certain quests if they've got their quest cape and things like that. Why did we decide to place the activity advisor where it is? Are we looking to change the location somewhere else if players told us to?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. So we actually have explored several possible locations for the activity advisor. So for example, we have thought about putting it in the menu tab, maybe next to the quest list or inside the character summary. However, we think the tabs in the menu there are all about the game progress for the player. So putting the activity advisor there doesn't seem to fit very well, because we think it is more similar to the wiki or the word map as a supporting tools for the player to use it. So we decided to put it around the minimap. But unfortunately, there are already many information need to be displayed around the minimap, like the wellness levels, the gravestone counting down things. So the current position is the one we think the most appropriate. But like, we are always open for players' feedback to improve the system. So there's also the reason why we are doing this A/B test. So if many players prefer it to be somewhere else, we'll definitely take it into consideration.
Thank you. Okay, so what about returning players who have completed all of the quests? What can they expect from the activity advisor? I saw a lot of feedback from people saying this is a great tool. What about bosses? What about money making, equipment, achievement diaries? What do you think about this in terms of developing the activity advisor?
Yeah, we'd love to do that. The initial concept actually for this had multiple modules, is what we're calling them. So right now the quest module is available. The other ones we were thinking about was a skills one, which would show milestones and things for upcoming upcoming levels, sorry. So such as wearing a new armor set, being able to catch a new type of fish, that sort of stuff. As well as utility, which could address like travel options in a dedicated space, and miscellaneous things like mini games, new bosses that you can do. So all these things would be awesome and would fit really well. So depending on how the feedback goes, we might be able to. We just need to wait and see at this point.
Awesome. Kieren, do you have any thoughts on how you would like to see the activity advisor kind of progressing?
I'd absolutely love to extend it to cover all the other kind of core systems to the game, like Squid mentioned. It is a case of these are big pieces of work, and so hence why we really try to get it finished for quests first. They're obviously a big backbone for the game, especially when you are just starting out. There's so many quests available. So that seemed like a reasonable place to start. Let's test that. Let's see how it goes. Does this work? Does this improve the experience for players? Do people get use out of this? And that's good, right? That'll give us reassurance, give us confidence before we, go in and spend a lot more time doing the other work for the other systems. So, for example, like skilling methods, like how are you going to train fishing to that goal level or such. In code, we basically would need to start to properly define different methods with all the associated like information around them, like, let's say fly fishing in Shiloh Village. Like, how much XP per hour is that? Let's get some figures in game, get some facts, requirements in game. A lot of this stuff has to be able to tell you on that screen, can you do this? And none of this is very, centralized in a data-driven fashion that would allow us to do that at the minute. So just want to highlight, they're big pieces of work. We don't want to spend 6 months plus doing that kind of work unless we also first verify, like, yes, this is a good thing to do. Let's not do 6 months 6 months of work if it's not going to help anybody. But also beyond just that, we feel the actual systems themselves need to be improved. So the quest list, you'll notice recently we expanded with a bunch of new options. You can sort it, filter it by different means. It's a lot better than what it used to be when it was just alphabetical and free-to-play member split, and that's it. It doesn't really give you any indication about which quest is good for you and which quest isn't. The skill journals are really quite outdated. So, you click on the fishing skill journal, it doesn't tell you anything about how to train it. It merely is a list of unlocks, and it gives you very little information. So those UIs are very outdated, and those we would like to also tackle alongside this, because we see this as a tool that should be there to teach you how to interact with the actual game and help you interact with the actual game. So maybe one day, after you've used the activity advisor for a while, you would decide, actually, I don't need it anymore because I'm now familiar with the skill journals and I can fend for myself, so to speak. That's what we want to do, because we know the game is deep. We know the game is complex. That we can't change, but let's try and provide the players the tools to help them get to grips with it, such that they can get to that point where they have that understanding of how to set a goal for themselves.
Yeah,
I
think
absolutely love that.
Sorry, yes, I think what's one of the reasons we're doing this is we don't want this to replace any existing system there. We want this to build in the connection to the existing system, like the skill guide, the quest list, all that.
Awesome. That really leads well into the next question, which is from our more experienced players asking about setting their own goals in gameplay and how the activity advisor might assist with that. So you already mentioned, Kieren, that this is a tool to aid players, teach them how to fish, so to speak, so that they can feel comfortable doing things. But what about the ability to create specific tasks within the activity advisor? The idea of a reverse feature, which allows the player to set their own goal, and then they're just advised on how to go about that goal. I'm curious about what you guys think about this idea.
Yeah, it's a great question. As mentioned, the overarching goal is to support goal setting. It's to get players setting their own goals again. And actually, when thinking about potential features for this, another idea we had was a content planner, which would effectively let you choose a goal, such as I want to wield the Dragon Scimitar, or I want to complete Dragon Slayer, and then provide the details of the requirements and the ways to get there, and then let the player plan out their journey to that point. Like I'm sure we've all done in Excel or Notepad, but a more in-game integrated way to do that. That would be really cool. It's not planned for the activity advisor itself at the moment, and I see them as slightly separate things that could work together. Like you could imagine opening the advisor and then clicking a recommendation and adding it to your content planner and then creating that journey to get there. But there's currently no plans to do that.
I saw this come up in the survey and I was like, wow, that's such a good idea. Like our players really come up with some great ideas, but good to have confirmation about that. Perhaps something for like an idea log or something like that. But I'm glad to hear that the idea behind the activity advisor is getting them to the point where they're almost self-sufficient. That's kind of what we want for every player, right? So that's great. If nobody has anything to add on that, I can move on to the next one. Can activities be queued up, or can only one activity be advised at any one point? So this is a question basically around whether tasks disappear for players after a certain period of time, how many tasks can players expect to see running? Do you guys have a response to this one?
Yeah, so well, as you can see in the screenshot before, so the current setting we have is there are 3 available quests and 2 target quests has been displayed in the activity advisor. And also we think about one of the future improvement is to let player be able to manually pin a quest in the system, so it will not be replaced by other quests, or filter a quest out of the system, so it will not be selected anymore. No, if you don't want this quest to be seen. But well, these are just some early thoughts we have for now. But if we got enough feedback on this from the player, from the community, then it could be the next improvement we work on.
Great, awesome. There's so many different things you can go, so many different directions you can go in, and I'm glad to see that the feedback is going to be taken on board. So that's awesome. Can the activity advisor be customizable per account type? So if somebody wants to have a 10 HP account, a skiller account, can they customize and filter the recommendations based on what their goals are?
So not manually at the moment. It won't recommend anything you can't do. So if you keep 10 HP and anything requires a high combat level or something like that and you haven't got it, then it's not going to recommend those things. But it could recommend something you don't want to do. But then there's the argument that if you're doing these account types, you're probably more an advanced player anyway. So the question is, how useful is the advisor to you? Either way, one of the things we would like to add, as Diazong mentioned, is a block list. So you could disable certain recommendations from showing up at all, which would help in that situation.
Awesome. Will there be an option for grouping involved? So can people have some kind of way of finding a group to do activities with that are suggested with the activity advisor?
It's an interesting idea. There's nothing at the moment, but I mean, how would you do grouping for quests? I guess Shield of Arav is one, but other than that, a bit more tricky. If we did add the other modules with mini games and bosses and things like that, then it could point to the grouping tab. Yeah, that's an interesting one to consider, how we can make it a bit more social and support grouping for around these things. Yeah.
Just imagine a group of people all with their activity advisors grouping together. Maybe you meet your GF because she was doing the same task as you. I don't know. But yeah, it seems like something that could be considered. It's just a case of how prevalent it is in terms of feedback. But yeah, I saw that come up in feedback and I thought that was really cool. And it seems as well like a lot of our existing players, so not new, not returning, but existing players, just think this could be a fun activity to do with friends. So yeah. Will the activity... Oh, sorry, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, I imagine it could be useful for you've got a friend who's joined the game or something, and you're like, oh, well, show me what your activity advisor is saying, and we can go do some of those quests. You know, take a bit of that legwork out of trying to figure out how to get your friends into the game.
Absolutely, yeah. I know. I'm the same with people at Jagex. Like, they want to do stuff with me in game, and I'm like, I don't know what to do because my account's so much further away than yours is. So this would be great for me. I actually logged in to see whether I was picked to be part of the test, but I wasn't, unfortunately, so bad. Will the activity advisor differ in free-to-play and how?
There's no difference. It will give you the same recommendations. There is a free quests only tab, so you can look at that to only get recommended free-to-play quests. But yeah, there's no distinction between the two, just the two different tabs.
And will we be linking the activity advisor to the adventure path NPCs or NPC?
No, there's no plans to. It's a standalone thing. And also this slightly different because this is less of a guide or a task list to do. It's non-linear. It would just recommend goals based on your account rather than a path to follow. So they're a separate thing. I think I'd be careful about getting them interlinked. So no, at the moment they're separate.
Cool. And I'm wondering, Kieren, if you can elaborate on like what is the goal with Adventure Path and what is the goal with Activity Advisor? Like, can you make that distinction to players? Because a lot of players kind of thought that they could be linked together. What are your thoughts as, you know?
So I think my current thinking might well differ from what we originally intended. Certainly originally we kind of maybe envisaged it running a bit deeper into the game, having longer paths that get you to grips with things. I think nowadays what we've learned really is it's maybe better to be a helpful tool right at the start to very much get you to grips with the basics. Because what we've settled down on, and hence why the activity advisor makes so much sense, is that we need players to be able to set a goal. If you think about it as a knowledgeable player who's probably watching the stream, you're always thinking about goals. What are you trying to achieve? You're trying to complete Monkey Madness so you can get that Dragon Scimitar. But if you're a new player, how on earth do you actually know that that's even a sensible thing to do? How do you know that Monkey Madness is what unlocks the Dragon Scimitar? Like, there's so many questions that suddenly are really hard if you don't actually have that knowledge to hand. The wiki's great once you know what you want to do. because then it will give you all the advice about that activity. So the adventure paths, that's something they don't do very well, right? They just give you a task list and you sort of go through it, but you don't really get quite to the level of understanding why it's a good thing to do. So it might be a useful tool to teach you the basics of like, oh, I fish something, I go to the bank and put it in the bank. Okay, I get to grips with how those basic mechanics work. But I see the activity advisor as being the thing that can really help you set goals and essentially be the part that runs deeper into the game. To be honest, we probably need to pay more attention to what we're doing with adventure paths and tutorialing and that side of the game as well. It's just not something we've got around to yet.
Great response, thank you. Have we looked into adding rewards to the activity advisor? Maybe this encourages more retention. Squid, you mentioned earlier that something that we're not going to be because of a certain reason. Could you explain that?
Yeah, I feel quite strongly on this that we shouldn't add rewards. In psychology, there's a type of reward known as controlling rewards, which are rewards that are not intrinsically linked to the task you're doing. And that would be the case here. And sure, in the short term, that does increase retention and that does increase engagement. But in the long term, it undermines intrinsic motivation. And that's the kind of motivation we want to cultivate. That's the ones that makes you have the most fun, keeps you playing the longest. So that's what we want to have. So by undermining that, you actually get more drop-off in the later game. And especially when the rewards become less fun or less useful or less interesting to you, or the recommendations stop or become more difficult. So, and overall, you'll actually have less fun doing the tasks if there are controlling rewards involved, because you'll put all of the emphasis on the reward, not the fun of doing the task. And it's the same with linear guides and checklists. If you follow a linear track, the game's telling you to do things in a certain order, even without rewards, that has an undermining effect, which is why we're trying very hard to avoid doing that with this and focusing on the goals and unlocks like you'd naturally do as a player, not forcing you down a path that you don't want to do or are not sure about. So yeah, no rewards, please.
You can actually look at it like we want people to stop using it. Like
yeah,
we want people to use it to get to that point where they've learned, but we actually want them to move off of it because we don't see it as it should be necessary all through the game. But yeah, I 100% agree with what you said, Squid. And inevitably we will see, like, you know, my activity advisor locked Iron Man accounts and all that sort of stuff. But that should be fun down the line.
Yeah, we don't want this to make.
Oh,
I
no,
don't want it
ahead,
to feel. Yeah, don't want it to feel like a daily task, weekly task, feeling like being pushing the player to keep doing that to catch up the progress. It's not like something like that. It's more should be a tool that is player when he want to do something, he don't know what to do next. He can check there to find more useful advice that is being customized for his character.
Absolutely. I feel like I learned a life lesson from Squid there in psychology. Like I'm just going to go off this stream and reflect about how I feel about my life, rewards in my life, things like that. So that was
It's
awesome.
super interesting. I love that stuff.
I just saw the chat's reaction, like Giga Brain, Galaxy Brain, like definitely the chat is in agreement. So that's awesome. We have sped through those questions. I'm just wondering, did anybody want to say anything on the panel, just in general, about the feedback that you've seen about the activity advisor, what your thoughts are so far on how it's gone? Is there anything extra you wanted to add before we just talk about new players and the new player experience? Sorry to put you
I just
on the
thank you
spot
everyone
there.
for all the feedback. It's been really encouraging to see people on Reddit and on Twitter being in support of it. We weren't sure how it would go down with you guys being active players, whether you'd see the value. So it's awesome to see all the comments and feedback on it. And yeah, keep that coming. Can't wait till everyone gets their hands on it, and then we can really start digging into some gritty feedback.
Nice. Kieren, Daizong, anything that you feel about the feedback or just the response so far?
No, I think it's so far so good. I think, yeah.
Cool. All right, cool. Let's talk about the new player experience. So basically, the activity advisor is actually for both new and returning players, but there's a conversation to be had around the new player experience and what we do in general to encourage new player retention. And I noticed a lot of you guys in the community want us to talk about free-to-play and what we kind of plan to do to revitalize free-to-play. And there's so many of you asking about, are we planning on adding a free-to-play boss? You know, you've suggested a giant rat, a giant goblin, things like that, or potentially opening up some achievement diary tasks. And I thought this was really interesting because a lot of you have said, especially following Group Iron Man, that there is gaps in the early to mid game, especially with group content at that level. So I just thought a conversation would be cool to have around what your thoughts are on this. Do you think revitalizing free-to-play with this kind of like group content is something that we would look at? And what are the considerations going into it? So I just open up to you guys. What do you think? Just, you know, we have like half an hour. We can just chat about it along with some other player questions. Ramble away.
All right. So I think there's value in some free-to-play content. But what I want to say is that compared to back in the day, when so many of us have lived this story. Back in 2007, we started playing RuneScape at school. We didn't have access to our parents' credit card, and we played free to play. And most of us played until we got to like Dragon Slayer, until eventually we either phoned up while they weren't in the room to pay for membership, or managed to persuade them to pay. The thing is, today, most people joining Oldschool are like young adults, you know, 18 plus kind of age frame, in their 20s. People have much more access to money to pay for membership. But what I'm getting to is people spend a lot less time in free to play than they did 15 years ago. So the same way that I joined the game, and so many of you in the chat I'm sure did, spent a lot of time in free to play, but that doesn't happen so often today. A lot of people will subscribe very, very quickly instead. So there's less value in putting stuff in free to play because not many people even get to deep into the free to play game. And we have tried some of this stuff. We've done Below Ice Mountain, the quest there, and added some free to play content. So it's not to say there's no reason to do free to play content. This is something we should do. But generally, I'm thinking more about early game content, and I think an early game brute boss would absolutely be great. But moreover, I'm kind of getting to the point of like, you want to explain to the player what this game's about as early as possible, right? Such that the player inherently actually understands what this game is. Because if this game ain't for you, you probably want to find out as fast as possible. Like, let's respect your time, and so you can get out of the way if this game isn't for you. Let's not fool ourselves into retaining people who are going to quit after an hour or a day, right? We want people who are actually interested in this game to find out that this game is for them as fast as possible and get to grips with it. I'm not really forming like a coherent stream of thoughts here. I'm just sort of spewing out.
I'm just enjoying listening.
But yeah, kind of TLDR. People don't spend as much time in free to play before they become a member as what they used to. And I also want to start highlighting why this game is awesome as soon as possible, and really give people the tools to be able to understand it and get to grips with it.
Yeah, it's kind of that
That's
point.
a great
Sorry, go on.
No, I'm just saying base take, like, trying to use the lingo. Go ahead, Squid.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of that point we've been talking about with the advisor, which is surfacing content and making people aware of what the depth and the breadth of the content is, but beyond free to play and the game in general. Travel options being a big one there. And also looking at pain points that are in free to play potentially. Making sure that players are subscribing because they're having fun and they want to have more fun, not because they're frustrated that their run energy is so damn low and they think they might enjoy it if it was a little bit more. But yeah, also group content. I would be in favor of more lower level group content. I think a big reason people stick around in MMOs is for the social factor, even if you're not directly engaging with like clans and stuff like that. Just having people around and doing content, or being able to do content with your friends even just at a low level, would be super beneficial and help people have more fun. So I think free to play and low level group content like that could definitely be improved upon, and potentially tying in better with members content, because sometimes it can feel like free to play is its own standalone thing. It's there, and then you subscribe, and then there's all this new stuff, and you don't know where to begin. Whereas we had more ties into some of those areas, more introductions and things like that in free to play, then that might provide a nice stepping point into members.
I'll also give you a base take, Squid.
Base. Jagex approved base takes. Nice. Oh, I feel so wrong using that word. Like, I feel like it's exclusively reserved for the players to say to other players or to us, but we can't say it to each other. So I'll just move on awkwardly. When we make changes into free-to-play, or we consider any changes, I feel like it's an important thing to discuss about what considerations we have to keep in mind, right? Because we get a few people saying, you know, why don't you do this? Make this cosmetic available in free-to-play. It's a really small, simple change. It would really improve stuff. And I thought it might be interesting to find out the insight from a development point of view, what kinds of things you think about when you get a request in free to play. Like, what do you have to consider? Kieren, would it be okay if I ask you this question?
Yeah. I mean, what I'd first say is, and this applies to pretty much everything we do, what are you trying to achieve? It's not a sake of just, oh, this is nice content, somebody in free to play will like this. It's like, we got to think as game designers, what are we actually trying to achieve with this change? Now, obviously, people in free-to-play are generally not spending money on Oldschool. So a lot of the time, we obviously are thinking about how the content will make the game more appealing to you. You would more likely to stay, or even more likely to potentially subscribe because you like it so much and want more of that. So it's not always the case, right? That it's very specifically that. But generally, so we want you to stick around. We want you to become a member. We want you to make this game the game you're going to play for the next 10 years, like so many of the other people have done, which is ludicrous. I know this game's been part of my life for 15 years, and it's crazy that people are coming up on these kind of milestones. But yeah, I want to help people understand that love that so many people out there have for this title, because it's managed it in a way where so many of the other games from so many of the other MMOs, online MMOs from the early 2000s, haven't got that love still to this day. But somehow RuneScape and Oldschool do, and I want to help more people discover that. We've all had that moment where it all clicked, and you suddenly had that satisfaction from playing this game. Again, I'm doing a view of consciousness thing, but yeah,
I love it.
When you're thinking about it, it's like, what do you want to do? Because it's not just new content. Sometimes we make like, trimmed rune free to play. And well, why are we doing that? Well, two things. There's, you're kind of thinking, on one hand, there's the free to play players who are dedicated to free to play. They're a small community, but they do exist. You'll give them a new cap, right, to really strive for, a reason to get more money, to achieve essentially the more valuable version of Rune. And for members, you're actually making Clue Loot more valuable, because we all know Clue Loot ain't worth too much, but generally the stuff that's been made available at free-to-players ends up worth more because those players have to buy it and want to buy it from the members who are getting it. So it depends. It's very contextual on the change, but the key thing I emphasize is kind of what I said at the start. Why are we doing it? There's got to be a reason for doing it, not just the sake of it sounds cool.
Absolutely. And that actually reminds me, because for Guardians of the Rift, we had a reward that we polled as, should we make this available in free-to-play? And it missed by a small margin. But the intention with that change was to make the item more valuable for, the people that get it in the content. So it's just interesting to consider all of the different communities and how players respond when we do pitch changes to free-to-play. Another question I had, which isn't on the script, but do you guys, and feel free to not answer this, by the way, but we've had a couple of people ask, how long have we been playing? And one thing I wanted to ask is, if you remember, what was the thing that made you subscribe to Old School? For me, I remember specifically it was the white beret. I had to wear it along with all the fashionscape. And I was just so happy to wear it. But like, if you guys have that, let me know, or let the chat know, because they seem interested. You
For
remember what
me,
made
for
you
some
subscribe?
reason, I got into my head that like you had to buy rune from the shops, right? You had to buy equipment from the actual stores, the armor shops, and I didn't. Obviously, this is pre-Grand Exchange, so it didn't really click for me as a kid that I could just find a player who's got it and buy it off them. And particularly, you got the defense level for like black equipment, and you're like, gosh, I could get an upgrade, but where do I get this from? And I would look at the world map and think, oh, look at all those armor shops in like the rest of the game world that I can't go to. I want to go to those armor shops and see if they sell the equipment I want. That's a distinct memory in my head. But I think I subscribed like around the time I had just beat Dragon Slayer and stuff.
Nice.
I don't remember at what point I subscribed. It was quite early. It was definitely not after Dragon Slayer. It was before that. I just wanted membership. But what I do remember is the first thing I did after getting membership was go get the pirate outfit and then go to a free world on Varrock and show my friends this cool new pirate outfit I just got because it's members only. And I'm super cool now because I've got a members pirate outfit.
I remember doing that too with my fashionscape. It was just like such a flex. Like you go to free to play with your members. Oh,
everyone's got to remember, right? Being free to play, you see that Chad turn up in like an obsidian cape and a dragon med and D legs and stuff. And you're like, oh my god, that's so cool.
It's like that meme, like how I feel in a members world, and you're just walking through like in a free to play world, and you're just walking through like a ghetto or something with like hella drip. So yeah, no, I completely relate. Okay, next question. We only have 10 minutes. How do we go about getting feedback from new players, especially new players who don't interact with us on socials?
It's certainly a lot harder because everyone in the chat right here, you've been willing to turn up to our live stream and generally post your thoughts in the chat as we go. Similarly, all the dedicated players who post on Reddit, Twitter, or even just simply upvote them. I mean, there's a whole community of people who will never post on Reddit, but absolutely read it and vote on things. So it's a lot easier to get feedback from people who are dedicated. They want to give us their feedback because they want the game that they're spending their time playing to get better and for their concerns to be listened to. For new players, they haven't got that investment. Why are they going to spend their time going on Twitter and posting their thoughts? You'll get some. But particularly, there's a few things we can do. One is surveying. This is something we want to start doing more and more effectively. But you won't get the best and it's similarly to the socials, right? When you send a load of people a survey, the people who are more dedicated will answer it more, but we could still get a good amount of data from that and get feedback, get input on what they want to see, what their feelings are, and why they didn't stick around, what they were looking for when they joined the game. Like, these are the sort of questions you can hopefully pose to these players. On the other side, there's less so feedback, but actual hard data, right? We will see who sticks around in the game. We will see who quits. We will try and get a sense of when you quit, try and understand maybe why you've quit. But also, if you stick around, well, what content were you doing? Trying to understand what content is sticky, what content isn't sticky. Why do you play? So obviously see success, what are the dropout points and so on through the tutorial and beyond. And then the other thing that we have dabbled a little bit years ago, but I'd like us to do more, is sort of like focused player workshops. So you can work with like research companies around the world who can bring players in, have them play through the start of your game and get feedback from them, things like that. Or we can intentionally reach out to players who we've seen join, quit, or maybe stuck around and ask them for an interview. Sometimes this will be like the sort of thing you might pay for these players to like come in and give you their time So yeah, it's a lot harder. You got to be a lot more focused and dedicated to try and get this insight. But obviously, it's incredibly valuable to try and understand why someone's sticking around, why someone's deciding to not stick around, or what they really want.
That is awesome insight. It's really good to hear behind the scenes about what kinds of things that we do and look at in terms of encouraging new and existing player retention. The only thing is that in my head, I can't get over the idea that we would like literally sit down and interview someone that just logged into Old School. Like, I'm just imagining we get someone who like plays Fortnite, be like, try this game. We just interview them. That would be so cool. Like sitting down with a Fortnite player for an hour, finding out what they think. We should totally.
Some of
do
the most
that.
painful thing we've done is when mobile came out. We did one of these kind of exercises. We worked with a research agency, and they brought a lot of players through the tutorial and give them like a few hours to sort of mess around, just proceed through the game, basically. And these companies, it might not just be Fortnite players, right? Like that might be funny, but they'll obviously try and pick an audience that reflects who we think the game should appeal to and such. And then we'll get footage and watch them try to do the tutorial and beyond. It is the most painful thing. Trying to watch somebody who has never seen the game before, understand it, try to go through the tutorial or whatever, and it instantly makes you cringe. You watch it like, God, there's a big flashing yellow arrow on the screen. What's so hard about
meme
following
content.
that? But people will still not follow it. It's just people don't, and so it really highlights how hard the struggles can be. And it's easy to sit and chat and laugh that this is so easy. But I'm sure there's been games you've played and like you've not even realized that you've mindlessly ignored the tutorial or whatever.
Yeah.
But it highlights to us like what you've got to try and do. And our tutorials, I'm not even talking about changing the tutorial itself, but the UI, the way the instructions given to you are really quite dated. So you can see why people don't even read the chat box. And that's the only text like on screen where people will not read it. So yeah, there's all sorts to do and all sorts to improve. But yeah, it could be a frustrating process.
Yeah, as a kid, I feel like I was better at games than now, which is crazy because you would think that it's the opposite. All right, speeding through. How do we encourage new players to care enough about the world of Gielinor to stick around? Daizong, we haven't heard from you for a while. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think one of the main issues we have for the new player is they don't know where to start after they've done the tutorial and been teleported to the land bridge. And I think this is not because they don't have enough information about the game, but in the opposite, they are overwhelmed by the information they can get. There are so many different guides and walkthrough you can find in the internet, and you can find almost everything about the game in wiki for every detail. So, but for example, and also another example is after the player has been teleported to land bridge, you might be open the world map, find out something to do, but then what you find is so many different activity icons around the land bridge, but you don't know which one suits you the best. You don't know where to start. So I think that's one of the main reasons that we are working on this activity advisor. So we want this to be a handy tool that can give customized suggestions that can help the new player to filter out all this information and only pick the one that is the most useful one for you to use it. And hopefully the new player will know what's the best for them to do next.
That's a fantastic response. And you use the word overwhelmed to describe how players feel. That's something that I know has come up time and time again. People have said that the game, especially for a new player, is overwhelming. And I'm just so glad to see that you're recognizing that and you're looking at ways to kind of filter out the noise and point directions, guide them in a way that isn't too invasive to help them. So thank you so much.
Cheers.
Last question, and this is just open for everyone, and then we'll wrap up. A lot of players struggle with getting around the world, new players particularly because of they're not as familiar with teleports or fairy rings. We've touched on this a bit earlier, but we also recognize that agility is a huge part about moving around and traversing the world. So what are the panel's just general thoughts on new players, agility, moving around the world? And do you think that agility could ever become free to play? We've seen a lot of discussion on that. What do you guys think?
All right, let me rant. This needs a rant. Even if agility is free to play, it doesn't fix it. That's my first point. Because even if you subscribe straight away, gosh, do the first thing you want to do to go and train agility to 60 so you get a reasonable experience? It absolutely shouldn't be. Second, you then have to get graceful if you really want a good experience, which means, you know, you obviously go even deeper into the agility skill, and then that dominates cosmetics. And we all know a lot of members feel they're sick of graceful being dominating the cosmetics. And why are you going to wear a cosmetic that weighs many kilograms when you can wear graceful and get all the benefits from that? Same time, we obviously want agility to still be meaningful as a skill and still help you and have benefits. But simply making agility free to play will not solve the problem. It might be part of the solution, but I think there's still core rebalancing that kind of needs to be done. Are there many other games where you sort of use all your stamina and then it takes like 5 to 10? Is it like 10 minutes? Something ridiculous to restore to 100%. Most games I know, you know, stamina goes down fairly slowly. It reaches 0, and then maybe you stand still for 10 seconds and you see it like go back up on the UI or whatever. So it's absurd when you sit there for like 10 minutes to get run back to 100%. Because walking feels so slow. So basically, I think it needs rebalancing. And maybe quite an extensive rebalancing. And really think about how this works, how agility interacts with energy, and how graceful and how important graceful and stamina potions are as well. Because we wouldn't want to really devalue stamina potions and all these other elements. But I think we kind of need a proper holistic look at energy as a system and all these different components that are obviously part of it to make sure that it is reasonable. Because it's awful. It's awful when you roll 1 agility and try to run anywhere. Particularly as soon as you stick armor on. And guess what any new player does? They've got their fancy new armor that they've just got. They want to stick it on. They don't realize straight away that it has weight, and that makes a drastic difference as well. So it just amplifies the effect straight away.
Absolutely great discussion there. Squid, do you have anything to add, or Daizong, about the kind of like agility, free-to-play, run energy at early game? I know this is something you considered with the activity advisor in terms of future development, in terms of teleportation suggestions and stuff. So
yeah, teleportation and that stuff was definitely on my mind while doing the advisor. I think Kieren's point on taking a whole look at run energy as a whole and agility is a good thing to do, definitely. I just want to touch on the tutorial thing quickly as well. Diazong was saying about being overwhelmed. I think one of the issues with the tutorial is that it provides you a ton of information completely out of context and then dumps you in a completely different location, and then you have to try and make use of that. And it's like, how is that ever going to work? So one thing what I was thinking about was actually we could introduce a new intro quest where you have you squire for like an NPC modeled after a high level player, and you go around with him for a bit, and it shows you things like fairy rings. It shows you how combat works. You fight Elvarg for the start, set the scene for Dragon Slayer, do all these things that kind of get you the basics of the game around Lumbridge. It'd be around Lumbridge, around Draenor, around Port Sarim, and then so once you finish that, you've got the natural first goal, do Dragon Slayer. You've got all your bearings in the starting area, and you've got all the context for how to use them and what to do next. So that would be, I think, a better first user experience approach. And also, if you examine a fairy ring, why doesn't it give you any clue as to what a fairy ring is?
yeah, true, actually.
Like, you can't even figure it out.
It's mysterious. It's an MMO. But yeah, no, you've raised some really good points. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we're at time, so I will wrap up. Thank you so much for the discussion, guys. It was really, really valuable. I think chat found it hopefully valuable too. So thank you. Let's just wrap up with some announcements. So exclamation mark game update is our only announcement this week. We have the activity advisor releasing to a selected number of accounts this week. Log in, see if you got in to check it out. But don't worry if you didn't get in, because it looks like we'll be rolling it out to everyone once it fully launches, just based on feedback. So the game update also has information about our IP policy. Make sure you check that out if you're involved in any merch creation or just content creation in general, because it will have some helpful information for you. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you as well to Mod Sova, who gave a sneak peek of the Clue Scroll Helper, which is coming next week. So yeah. Any final words from anyone before we close off?
Well, I just want to thank you for all the players joining the A/B tests and giving the valuable feedback from the Reddit, from the community, and the activity advisor. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. And it was lovely to have you on stream here, Daizong. The chat were so happy to see you, and yeah, just hope to see you again on stream. Don't be afraid to stop by. All right. Thank you guys. See you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.